You're listening to Community Voice PHL, an award-winning talk show that informs, engages, and inspires. All right. Awesome. Snaps and claps and all that good stuff. That was a guest I'm sure you're familiar with. Many of you who have watched and viewed us before. I call it Myra the Magnificent, the Amazing. But she was able to come on and just share a piece with us real quick at the top of the show. And if you're tuning in, you listen to WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5. Thank you for just blessing us with that piece. Give us a little bit of inspiration. What came to that? What brought you to that piece?
The piece came from me. Like we go through a lot of things in life, and writing is my outlet. Writing is how I get it all out. And the poem is actually titled "Fire Went," which is actually the title.
Oh, there you go.
All the pain and put it into purpose.
There you go. And we'll have information about how you can get hold of that book and follow the amazing Amira, amazing Amira, and all her great work that she's doing. So thank you for blessing us with that piece. If you're willing to stick around, that'd be great. But understand you're moving and shaking and doing some creative stuff. But if you're willing to stick around for this episode, that'll be great because we do have another amazing guest. You can even join in the conversation. You have time or?
I have a little time. I'll stay, and then when I gotta bounce,
okay, you stay and you gotta bounce, you bounce. So that's cool. So we appreciate it again for everyone who's listening in and tuning in. Thank you for listening to Community Voice PHL Talk Show that informs, engages, and inspires. And speaking about inspiring, we do have, like I said, another guest on here who's definitely doing some inspiring work. And I'm just gonna give his bio, then we're just gonna jump right into it because this brother's been doing it since day one and really getting down in the space of community empowerment and every other type of work that we're going to talk about that he gets into. And I'm talking about none other than Dr. Howard Stevenson, who is the Constance Clayton Professor at Urban Education, Professional of Africana Studies and Human Development and Quantitative Methods Division of the Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the Executive Director of the Resilience Empowerment Collaborative, a research program, development, and training center that brings together community leaders, researchers, authoritative figures, families, and youth to study and promote racial literacy and health in schools and neighborhoods. From 2015 to 2021, he was the co-director of Forward Promise, a national philanthropic office that funds community-based organizations and that helps families of color heal, grow, and thrive above the trauma of historical and present-day dehumanization. Now, that's just a brief synopsis of what Dr. Howard Stevenson has been doing, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But thanks, Dr. Howard Stevenson, being on Community Voice PHL Talk Show. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here, Jeff.
Oh, you're welcome. So I know I gave a little bit of a bio, and as I was sharing, it could have been reading for the whole length of the show for all the great stuff that you're doing. So give our viewers a little bit more about what you've been up to. And I know we want to talk about the Lion story, and they can get to know a little bit about your background.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I grew up in Southern Delaware with folks who, when I studied psychology, their life experiences were not included in the curriculum. And so when I finally got a PhD, the people that I grew up with, they don't care how many degrees you have. They just care if you remember how they helped you get to where you got. And if you forget that, you're going to lose the sense of your soul. So the psychology that I've been practicing considers the fact that we will never degree enough people to address the mental health needs of young people and families in our community. So part of the research that I've been doing is trying to create interventions that heal while we stand up against injustice. And so it's one thing to fight and to protest, but you got to heal while you do this. And so some of the interventions include culturally relevant strategies that consider history, that consider confrontation of hate. We know the impact of hate, particularly racism, on the health and productivity outcomes of young people and adults is significant. And we can prevent that through several strategies. And I've tried to integrate those strategies in communities with natural healers, like barbers, for example, can be a place where we can get healing if we don't have insurance, if we don't have access to the resources that many people do have, but still don't get our people. So that's the kind of theme of how do we heal while we fight. But it's useful in the context of family work, in the context of anti-violence, in the context of what we're going through now with having to face direct and blatant dehumanization. So that's a short and skinny, I would say, of the work I've tried to do. And it is research, but it's also practical strategies for healing.
So, and I know a lot of that started out maybe with you doing the work in the barbershops. And so can you talk a little bit how that transitioned from being in the barbershops to now where you're at now?
Well, barbershops was along the way. You know, part of it, I started a project called Play in the mid-90s at E.S. Miller School in 1999, actually. It was a discipline school. It was only one of three in Philly at the time. In order to get in, be a student who had either had an assault against educators, adults, or students, or you brought a weapon to school. Those are the two criteria. And we stayed in E.S. Miller on 43rd and Westminster for 4.5 years. Colleagues, Chad Lassiter was one who was part of the team at the time. He's now Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission Director. He and I and others of my students and staff spent 4 days a week working with young people, particularly Black males, navigating conflicts and violence, where we use basketball and group therapy to help. And in each of these projects, PLAY stands for Preventing Long-Term Anger and Aggression in Youth. But it used physical activity as another vehicle to manage conflict. So we can see how young people on the court struggle, overwhelmed by stress, and struggle match the kinds of struggles they have in classrooms and in neighborhoods. And we could work them out in real time. That project has gone national, but it fits in the same frame of the barbershop project, that natural healing can happen in the context of everyday things that we do. The barbershop came probably around 12 years later with Dr. Loretta Jamaat and John Jamaat out of Loretta Jamaat and John were known for their work around HIV prevention for Black and Brown communities and in this country and in Africa. We teamed up where we targeted barbers and trained them in strategies on how to address these issues of HIV and safe sex prevention. And my focus is on the anti-violence focus. And the thing we learn about Black men, they will go to a barbershop, spend all day, and never get a haircut. And people have always complained that Black men aren't interested in therapy. And yet the men in these barbershops would share stories they might not tell a partner or a pastor or imam in their private times. And there's something safe about the context. So where do you go when you want to find that where men are vulnerable? The barbershop was that place. The barbers also saw themselves as healers. And in that context, men will share stories while they're getting their hair cut. And so we devised a strategy, an intervention that allowed for the cultural style of the barbers, the influence that they have with the men captive in the chairs. And we learned a lot from that process of letting these men do their style and their magic, but for the focus of violence prevention and HIV, safe sex prevention.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. So on the subject of the youth, how do we talk to our youth in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're and about these topics, it's a lot of, oh man, I kind of feel bad. Like, why do they hate me? Why do they look at me like that? Why do they treat me this way? I didn't do anything. I'm just a kid. I remember when I was a child in school and I learned about Emmett Till, and it just shook me to my core.
Yeah.
Just learning about the history of that, but there was no solution to it. It was just, hey, this is what happened, and they just left it on doom and gloom. So what are some specific tools that we can use to reassure Black children that it's okay to be who you are?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I spent a lot of time with young people around the country where we're teaching them how to deal with hate that shows up in their face, and that could be online as well as interpersonally. And the research on online hate is connected to a lot of teenage suicidality, anxiety, and depression, because it's a place that adults and parents don't often get access to what is happening to young people in these spaces. But the thing I've actually told a lot of parents, based on what you just brought up, is we can help them be real if we're real. But one way that parents or adults can be real is that we could tell the truth about our own challenges. And part of it, we love our children sometimes. We want the best for them. We don't want to show the negative side of the world. We don't want to show the negative hate that's out there. We want them to grow as children without all that. But children have been around us and they watch us without talking, which means they spend a lot more time figuring us out. And sometimes more than we do. We're busy taking care of them, but we're not watching them like they watch us, especially if we don't want them to talk. So they figure out our nonverbals, what we don't say. And so if we're not being honest, they know it. So what I've said to parents is like, you give them the mountaintop story. And this is what young people have told us. You tell us all the time what's possible. But when I'm struggling, I need a valley story. I need a story when I'm struggling. I want to know, how did you struggle, right? Tell me when you weren't doing right, or tell me when you questioned what direction to go, and that's real. Then I understand what I'm going through in the valley, always juxtaposed to the mountaintop that I can't feel like I can reach. It's a different conversation. Right. So tell me when you struggle, then maybe I'll tell you how I'm struggling. And that changes the game sometimes if we want to talk about, can I be myself? So can you be yourself is a beginning.
Yeah, that's powerful, Dr. Stevenson, because like you said, tell me how you struggling, then I can share with you how I'm struggling. And do you see that being like the generational disconnect when you're talking about healing in that space?
I do. And I think it's as parents, sometimes we've gone through things that are so traumatic that we haven't practiced how to talk about it. So it's not a moment to blame adults, leaders, unks, aunts, aunties. They might tell us stuff to do, but they don't always tell us why, because they're still traumatized by what has happened. When they tell that story, it brings up so much stuff that they've been squelching. And young people see that too. I might even see a parent or uncle or auntie in pain, but that doesn't address my pain just because I see that. So we can help our community and our leaders and our families, our loved ones, our adults by helping them process that pain, and then see the power of storytelling. Because the power of storytelling is that, as crazy as it is, even when we tell the ugly stuff, our brains respond different to stories than we do to just chatter, all right, or being proud, or when things are good, or right versus wrong, right? Those stories are complex. Our lives are complex, and storytelling is a wonderful way to mix up the certainty that we think we have in the world, and that's where a lot of our young people are. They're uncertain about the world.
And that complexity, that kind of lends into the understanding that we're not a monolith either, though, right? You know, it shares with us that there is depth to our experience and to our personalities.
Absolutely, yes. And you know, some of our children would be surprised at stuff we used to do, but also might be in their own way proud. You did that? I can't believe it.
Well, I'm telling you, Dr. Stevenson, my kids will not know about some of the stuff I did. They will not. I know where you go. I know where you're going with that, and that's a good thing, but they will not.
Right. I ain't saying tell it all. You asked me about how do I be myself.
True.
So there's a balance between can I tell some of it that matters. And it's, you know, I'm always, when I have families, I'm a family therapist by training in the old Philadelphia Chalk Irons days, and I'm always surprised by parents who, when I would come to my office, I would ask them, you know, they're so busy taking care of their kids. I would ask the kids to tell me what they know about their parents, like their work day, and they're usually surprised because since they've been watching their parents do everything, how they come in the house, how, you know, what they're nervous about, what they do, what they will say, what words they say, as you know, what is that, sugar honey ice, whatever they do. Kids understand it. So when somebody asks them, can you tell me about your mom, and you can tell me about your dad, they go through a litany, and parents are just staring like what? Because they don't get inside the world of young people because they're busy, they're overwhelmed themselves. So it's a way to understand. You might keep some things hidden, but you can't keep all of it.
Yeah. Because what they see sometimes is more than what we say, right?
Yes, and we talk with our bodies. We talk with our nonverbals too.
Indeed. So I have a question for the group. Is racism a mental disorder? We'll start with you, Dr. Stevenson.
No, it can contribute to folks struggling with their mental health and their wellness. I think of racism as a kind of spiritual evil as much as it is a power grab of dehumanization. So in essence, what we're seeing now is the use of power, but it's spiritually corrupt, right? And it's an assumption that some of us are more human than others. It's a fundamental assumption. And the last thing I'll say, in the guise of Christianity or religion, it is a lie. If I can treat you as not human, I'm the only one that can be human in this relationship. So no, it contributes to mental health and mental illness challenges, but it is not a mental disorder, in my opinion.
Well, there you go. That I'm a lean with the professional answer.
Don't do that.
I'm the only one getting asked about the rest of you. I'm interested.
I mean, I think it has some tentacles in it, though, in terms of how socially, psychologically our world has changed, right? So, you know, the old argument, nature, nurture, And in times past, a lot of that nature nurture argument has now become there's a confluence of all of that now, where, you know, in times past maybe it was more nurture, you know, but now it's kind of the argument where, since society has shifted a lot of its, again, ideology, some of it's now nature, because there's been generations who have shifted to this base ideology. So, you know, that right now it's just like I'm a centrist in it, if you will, you know, not getting political with it, but I'm like a centrist because I can understand both sides of the argument. But I do see, going back to your yay point, you were saying there's still a cause for us to fight in this area, to make sure we can get that understanding, at least, if not respect. So that's my take on it. Does that hold up for you, Nick?
That's perfectly fine with me. Amir, what you got?
I do think it's, I'm going to agree with everything they saying. Learned behavior, nurture, a system, if you will. Yeah, it's, I don't know. My brain is like not braining. But yeah, it's very much learned behavior, and it's a power grab, as he said. System is, especially like when you study the history of India and the I'm sorry, go ahead. I can't even think. My brain isn't.
No, it's all good, because you landed a good balance there. Because when we look at the world systems too, not just our United States societal system, it's a play on how we have to, you know. And again, Doc, I'm gonna toss it over to you. It's how we understand, how do we heal in those spaces, to pull it away from just being. And I'll say it this way: do you think, Doc, that there's too much therapeutic, and not in a bad way, therapeutic emphasis on some of the healing process that needs to be pulled away back to the, if you will, barbershops, right? If that makes sense.
I think that there are ways that we can take care of each other that you don't have to call therapy, but are still healing. And part of that includes an honest telling of the truth.
Yeah.
Right. You could realize that truth telling is in and of itself dangerous. But when we think about, in a religious perspective, telling, you know, the truth of what we've gone through can get us out of a lot of dilemmas of trying to be somebody we're not, or something that we're not. But I find the idea of healing a very important one that's universal, even though people might have different feelings about it. So I'd be interested in how anybody thinks about, you know, how do you take care of yourself when you're experiencing rejection or hate in the world, wherever it comes from.
Yeah, and that's important. And before we wrap up, I want you to talk a little bit about the Lion story. And I can only imagine that work that you're doing, the Lion story, comes from the adage, the Lion story will never be told if the hunter holds the pen. And I don't know if that's where the Lion story came from in that essence, but talk about the Lion story project that you're working on, and how people can support that, and all the great things you're doing.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for that. The version that we use, and I've been using since I came to Penn in 1990, actually, and it came connected to folks like Wade Nobles out of Oakland. Professor Dr. Wade Nobles was a brilliant Black psychologist. But it's the Lion story will never be known as long as the hunter is the one to tell it. And there are absolutely many different versions. But it puts an emphasis on, you have to fight for your story, right? And we think of it in our work, everybody's story is important. My identity story is not better than yours. Your identity, racial story. But if you really want to and everybody's story is powerful and important, but to get the power and the importance of it, you have to engage the ugly and the beautiful of your narrative. And that's part of some of the work we do around trauma. You know, we can't expect trauma to go away by not facing it. So when you face what Wade Nobles calls the rupture and the splendor of our existence, then we get the power, because we overcome those challenges that we've feared, and our story gets richer. So storytelling in this frame is, how can we help young people? How can we help each other frankly, I feel my job is to help people fall in love with their own stories, with their own narratives. And we're in a culture that's trying to write a story for you. If you don't grab your own narrative, someone will write one for you. As we can see, they don't care who we are. And this particular government is challenging our voice and our skin color and our being, our citizenship, our birthright. So the question of what is your story, and are you willing to fight for it? And the work that we're doing, the Lion Story, is a project where we prepare professionals on how to deal with hate in the workspace. Over the last 6 years, we started at the Boys College House with Dr. Brian Peterson and I and students, and it's grown recently in the last 6 years as a nonprofit. Our current executive director is Lisa Nelson Haynes, and our staff folks who helped to develop the curriculum, Sham Petros, and I have developed Lion Story to support professionals who are struggling on how to deal with racism and other identity conflicts in the context of the workplace, in schools, in face-to-face interactions. But it is around how to help people tell their stories and get healing from those interactions.
So if anyone wants to take part in that or support or get connected to it, what are ways, as you wrap up this segment, what are ways that they can reach out to you and, like I say, take part and support?
Yes, if you go to thelionstory.org, that's 2 S's, lionstory.org, you'll find a theme around the work that we do. We have an institute coming up in October. But first, we have a fundraiser coming up September 25th at the Fittler Club from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock. My brother, I don't know if you knew this, Jeffrey Jones, but my brother, Brian Stevenson, is a famous lawyer. And when I tell people he's so famous, people don't think he's my brother, but he's my younger brother.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer. He's been fighting. He wrote a book called Just Mercy. He's been fighting on behalf of innocent folks on death row. He's been fighting against the death penalty. He and I are going to have a conversation on September 25th about healing and justice, how to fight oppression and heal at the same time at the Fittler Club. And we're inviting folks to come out. And then October 14th through 17th, we run a racial literacy, what we're calling Resilience Literacy Now Institute, where we'll be 4 days virtually teaching folks how to navigate their stories for healing and standing up to oppression.
Cool. We'll have all that information on the show notes so that you can get in contact with Dr. Stevenson. And Dr. Stevenson, of course, I do know about the work that your brother's doing, and he got one up on you by having Michael B play him in the movie. You gotta gotta have Michael B play you in the movies.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is that because it was his movie, I got to meet those folks. And I took a photo, and Michael B and Jamie Foxx are in my PowerPoint slide whenever I go. And young people, third graders, and I talk to third graders all the time, might fall asleep, but when I show that Michael B. Jordan photo, they wake up and they stay awake for the rest of my time.
There you go. And we want everybody to stay awake to the important work that you're doing as well. So thank you, Dr. Stevenson, for being on this show, Community Voice. We really appreciate what you're doing. We do want to have you back on in the near future to talk about the continuing work that you're doing and how some of that research has reformed and transformed communities in a way that's uplifting and positive. So thanks again for being on Community Voice. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So as we begin to wrap up this segment of Community Voice, any last words, Nick?
Just a reminder to people to speak up for injustices when they see it, even if you're not a person of color. I know it's easier to, kind of bury your head in the sand and close your eyes and cover your ears because it's like, oh, well, this doesn't personally affect me, but it does in a way you just don't realize it. And it might affect your kids. You might have mixed kids. You might have friends. Say something.
There you go. That's what we need you to do, to say something. So again, thank you all for tuning in to this episode of the Community Voice PHL Talk Show. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, follow us on our Apple Podcast. And as always, remember, if it's happening in your community, we need to hear your voice. Peace, and we are out.
Peace.